we do this channel, it's really good marketing, and the signal is Unico Zelo is growing at 16 to 20% per annum. Still, even though the world is the wine world's in turmoil and young people don't want to drink anymore, and like we have a glut of red wine, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't share the same problems that other wine companies do, and that's politically we're not allowed to admit that in many respects, but. Maybe there's something to learn here.
Welcome to Series 3 of Healthy Minds, Healthy Vines, a podcast proudly developed by the Wine Grape Council of South Australia and hosted by Callum McPherson and Nick Ryan. I'm Lisa Bonnier, CEO of the Council, and I'm delighted to bring you this series. The Wine Grape Council of South Australia represents our state's independent wine grape growers. We aim to provide growers with timely support and effective representation through advocacy, collaboration, and knowledge building. South Australia is home to just over half of Australia's vineyard area, and it's the diversity of our independent growers, their stories, challenges and opportunities that shows just how important connection is in grape growing. In this new series, we bring you 10 unique conversations, sharing a rich mix of views, experiences, knowledge and questions from across our grape and wine community. From personal journeys to practical insights, each episode is designed to spark thought, build connection and support well-being in our industry. So wherever you're listening, in the vineyard, on the road or at home, we invite you to tune in and be part of building healthy minds and healthy vines together.
Brendan Carter is one of the most dynamic voices in Australian wine. Alongside his wife Laura, he's the co-founder of Unico Zelo in the Adelaide Hills, a label built on sustainability, accessibility and a deep respect for Australian ingredients. Together they also run Applewood Distillery, celebrating native botanicals through spirits and cocktails, and they've grown a reputation for pushing boundaries while staying true to their roots. Brendan is passionate about reimagining what wine can be in this country, not just a product, but a reflection of place, culture and community. He's also a fierce advocate for education, innovation and storytelling, drawing on lessons from great wine capitals around the world while championing South Australia as a leader in its own right. Here's Brendan Carter.
Brendan, when did wine first capture the imagination?
I was studying law up in Queensland, didn't really enjoy it. I was working at a wine store in Ascot, which is a vintage cellars back at the time. And I was more interested in learning about, I picked up a gourmet wine traveller, rest in peace, and that just told these amazing stories, amazing narratives of like winemakers and wineries, places that as an 18-year-old, I could only dream of, and it's showing these amazing sort of pictures of these places. And I'm working in the store going, shit, that bottle of fermented grape juice over there came all the way from here. That's making these sort of connections. I found it so much more interesting going to work for vintage cellars than going to study constitutional law.
Yeah, so you're sitting in that 3-hour property law lecture thinking I'd much rather be looking at a wine bottle.
I was working in or studying in law because you got in Queensland we have these things called OPs. I'm not sure what they call them, TERs here. We've got a really good OP score. So you do medicine or law when you just kind of go down a bit of a path that you're told to, and then sort of like make up your path as you sort of go along. And so my sort of idea was
like a law degree is the old arts degree now.
It seems that way. Yeah. It certainly seems that way.
I used to say, it's a good general degree. A law degree.
It's a bit weird, right? That we kind of got there.
Like if you do that, then you'll be able to do other stuff. It's like, then I did law as well to start off with, and then found like, no, I think it's fairly specific if you want to be a lawyer, which I didn't want to be.
I had to rely on my law degree last week, actually. So like, I do think everyone, at least who studies business, should at least do contracts and torts. I think that particularly contracts and understanding how, or just reading legislation and how it reads, I think sets someone up pretty well. Now you've got sort of tools like AI and whatnot, I think is definitely helpful to be able to navigate the landscape. But yeah, that was when I fell in love with wine, I guess, in a sense. Growing up, parents always they were quite cultured, although we were in Queensland, so you're obviously at a necessarily disadvantage.
This is a national podcast, Brendan. It's a national podcast. Hi to our listeners in Queensland.
Oh, no, yeah.
So then you switched to studying viticulture?
I did... went across to France, did a bit of vintage work over in Champagne, and they were actually the ones that suggested that I should go and study, like that was even an option. Like when you go to Australian universities and you go to these sort of big open days and they tell you what you can study, And especially when you've just come from like a school atmosphere where it's like you want to be high performance, you've got to get into medicine law. They talk that shit up. They don't talk about ag in a way that they talk about law. They don't really glorify ag, do they? Yeah. Ag's for the TAFE students, that couldn't do TAFE or whatever. And it's quite annoying.
Yeah, they might put something up in the boarding school, notice board, but that's about it.
100%. And so I eventually got around in a strange way into finding like the industry that I loved and just how to do more of that, just do more of what I wanted to do, and that's how I ended up coming to Adelaide.
What did your parents think of you making that switch back then?
They were probably too preoccupied in the divorce proceedings to worry about what their kid was doing. No. They were absolutely, like, to their credit, absolutely supportive. They've never said that they were disappointed that I went out of law, put it that way. And
helps if you go into wine. That's it.
If I said I wanted to be a brewer or something like that, I think Dad would high five me. But
if you say you're going into wine, that's okay. That was the way I managed it anyway.
Oh, we travelled Europe quite a lot growing up because of what my parents did for work, and so your wine was always sort of a part of that, and they could sort of understand that, and so they were pretty supportive from the get go.
And Unico Zelo.
Yep.
How'd that come about?
It came about through probably a couple of things. So the key one being when you study winemaking at Adelaide University, you don't really touch grapes for a year, and that I found infuriating. And so we decided to get on with the winemaking side of things pretty early because I wanted to be able to apply like the hands-on side of things as I'm learning it and seeing it in.
Is patience a problem for you, Brendan?
I think more correctly, and modesty aside, I can sort of I get. Learning maybe a little bit quicker than others, and I want to employ it quickly. Yep. It's not so much about patience as it is about I don't need to spend as much time trying to learn and apply the knowledge that I'm learning as I'm learning it. And I also learn by doing, and I knew that from a very young age. So I knew that if I was going to be very good at this, I actually do need to be doing it at the same time. Yep. And so Unico Zelo started. It wasn't Unico Zelo. It was just I need to play with grapes, and then we needed to come up with obviously a theory and a philosophy. The first vintage we made was Merlot, and that really doesn't sort of correspond with the sort of philosophy of Unico Zelo. It was just, my mate had a bunch of Merlot. Good Merlot, by the way. It was Palatine Estate. It was Tim Knapstein's first planted sort of stuff in the hills. But Unico Zelo came about as a concept that at the time, it was probably 2010, 2011. Big inflection point for Australian wine. Poor vintage in 2011, 2008, 2009, started to see the impacts of GFC. So the crashing of the sort of international market and American market for Australian wine. And so it caused the industry to experience a number of pain points. And one of the AAVWS was really starting to kick up a lot of momentum, so the Australian Alternative Variety Wine Show. And it started to throw up this idea that are we actually making Australian wine in Australia, or are we making are we making Barolo in Australia? Are we like planting Nebbiolo to mimic a style and try to get it under a price point, for example, and release that to the rest of the world? Is this the narrative that we want to play with? And so tongue-in-cheek, like Unico Zelo is Italian, but it's actually, we're not about Italian grapes, we're about Australian wine. But it was tongue-in-cheek, unique zeal, unique passion, because we felt that at the time the unique passion that we had was just simply trying to make Australian wine. If I had my time again, it was a little bit too meta. I'd probably not call it Unico Zelo because now everyone just thinks they're the guys that do Italian grapes. But yeah.
But how do laws? We've had previous conversations with people talking about their time as students here, and it's not always easy to tap into the networks. For some people, it is, for locally based people or people with connections through the wine industry, those networks are already available to them. For some other people, like a law school dropout from Queensland, those networks aren't automatically there. How do you then find access to fruit? You're a student in a hurry. How did you go about building those networks, making those connections?
I was pretty lucky. Like 2000, and I moved here 2010 to start study. Late 2009, post vintage in Europe, and Adelaide wine scene in 2010. It's kind of funny. Like we certainly had less venues. It was like Universal Wine Bar and Cork Wine Cafe, which I actually worked for Travis and Michelle for a little while there. There was a lot more like activity with like Sommeliers Australia. There was a lot more, importers doing big tastings in Adelaide. You could go out and you could taste and you could meet who's who in the zoo of the Adelaide wine scene and greater wine scene. I experienced a bit of early success in this thing that was called the Lorenzo Galli Scholarship, which ended up morphing to become the Sommeliers Australia Scholarship, I believe, where it was effectively like a blind tasting of 150 Italian wines and pin the tail on the donkey. And I won it. And so that got me sent overseas, got a little bit of press through that. And from that, Steve Pannell offered me a position working in the winery during vintage in 2011, 12 and 13. And so when you start mixing in a circle with someone like Pannell, and he's very generous with his knowledge as well, but also very generous with the people that he knows and the introductions that he makes, and, kind of gave me my first sort of grounding into understanding who's who. So within that first year of study here, I was meeting, guys like Bart Van Olfen, who ended up becoming, of course, the husband of Kim Chalmers.
Mr. Chalmers.
And so, the contacts through that, as well as like in the Lorenzo Galli Scholarship, the people that I'm tasting against are like Karina Wright and like Leanne Altman, the gods and goddesses of, in my opinion, of the Australian wine tasting scene. And I still don't know how or if I ended up out tasting them in this particular scenario. I still have my doubts because these guys are just so damn good.
No, those two, they probably have their doubts too.
Yeah, probably, no doubt. Yeah, absolutely, I'm sure. But they were exceptionally supportive of me, and that opened up a number of doors really sort of early on. So I have a lot to thank in the industry. I was quite lucky.
So that obviously is a bit of natural talent. Do you think it was a gift initially, or are you just a fast learner and you were a bit obsessed with learning about it all?
Obsessive, I think. I think those two things go hand in hand. And that's something that's probably been more highlighted to me in recent years about obsessiveness and the good things and the bad things about obsessiveness. I'm sure if I sort of rewound and grew up, modern day and age, I'd probably be diagnosed with something. But I don't do anything else. I don't have any other hobbies, and I do not get bored with wine. You put 500 wines in front of me, I'll be equally fascinated over each and every single one of them. And everyone that works for me and with me would probably tell you that as well. And it's not exactly a good thing. I'm not the greatest person to have at a dinner party. I am at like a wine tasting party, but definitely not a normal dinner party, because all I'll end up is steering the conversation towards wine. Is
it hard, when you talk about people that are working with you and for you or whatever else, is it hard then if they can't hack the pace?
Good question. I've had to learn to police myself with this. That's probably one of when they say like, what are your greatest strengths and weaknesses? One of them is definitely, I'm obsessive, and sometimes when I get stressed, I'll get obsessive over a minor detail and get really frustrated that no one else is obsessing over it like I am. And I'm like, guys, this is a big deal. And that's why like the Unico Zelo story can't really be told without Laura, because she is the absolute, and again, everyone who either works with Laura or works for Laura will agree, she's the absolute and equal opposite of me in every single way, manner, shape, and form. But she helps me police that, I think, a little bit more. But no, I would say that there are equal amounts of people that say that they love working with that, and then people and past employees that would say that that was horrible.
Yeah, at least that's honest.
Yeah. How does Laura help steer the ship?
Well, she steers the ship. She's CEO. So we made a mutual agreement that after a certain amount of time through the development of the company, that she was the most appropriate of the two of us to lead it. I think, modesty aside, you want me for a startup. And that's why we continually, my responsibility in the grand scheme of what we do is always the startup aspects, the new vineyard, the Bottle Shock YouTube channel, the importation company that we've launched. That's where my forte exists. But the sort of ongoing management, slow growth, slow pace, optimization and efficiency side of things is definitely what Laura's forte sort of is. And so we sort of have this sub-function of our company called Funkworks, Skunkworks, if you're familiar with the background of that company. So that's my sort of baby. And then things graduate out of Funkworks and they go into Laura's purview to run. But she handles all, she gives us the budget. She tells us what we can and can't spend money on. She's the grand poobah.
So you get to do the fun part.
I get to do what I think is the fun part, and Laura gets to do what she thinks is the fun part. And I think that's the important thing. Some people don't like numbers. She loves numbers. Laura, sitting in this circumstance, she would be, don't get me wrong, exceptionally capable, but wouldn't find it as enjoyable as I do.
Yeah. But the approach you need to get something off the ground isn't necessarily the same approach that you need to maintain it or take it to the next phase. Did it take a while for you guys to work that out together and for you to realize where your strengths lied, or has that always been obvious?
In some ways, yes and no. Like, it's definitely a rocky road. We're very direct with one another. like we don't mince words. And for other people who are onlookers to that, that can be really quite uncomfortable. So like we've had staff leave because they're like, I find this too uncomfortable. And then we've gone, shit, like we didn't realize that that's the impact.
Whereas it hasn't bothered either of you at all.
It's so normal. And like Laura and I will often talk, especially with like other small business owners, because there's this sort of like shared sense of PTSD amongst small business owners. And when we hear things from sort of other employees or other staff at other companies and the things that they find as like being the worst things in the world, we're like, wow, like we go through such rough stuff, especially over the last 5 years, that our perception of what is difficult and hard is so skewed. You know, it's people will call it thick-skinned. I'm not too sure it's thick-skinned. It's so much more than that. It's crazy, but it did take a little while. It did take probably a couple of years.
You know, what is more than thick skin? What else do you need? What are the tools? Rather than just the ability to have stuff bounce off you, but, you know, how do you really work through it?
Build up your library of experiences. Say yes to basically everything you can until you learn which ones you should say no to. Don't overthink things. I don't know if I could offer any advice that would prevent someone from being able to learn through experience. I think it's just trying to maximize the sheer quantity of experiences.
What do you wish you'd said no to?
Custom manufacturing a screw press in China for $15,000 when we first started. I wish I had said no to starting up a grape growers cooperative that ultimately, due to the wet tax reforms, shut it down and then fined the company hundreds of thousands of dollars. I would have said, oh mate, the mistakes that we have actually made, if I were to list them out, honestly, it would be crushing.
We'd run out of time.
It would be crushing. But the point is the wins are simply greater than the losses, and we keep trying the next thing.
And how many of those wins are born from those mistakes?
100% everyone. If you had told me that go back, first vintage of that was 2014. Go back to 2014 and say that you're going to be selling 10,000 cases. The highest selling product that you make will be a orange wine made from a blend of Zabebo, Gewürztraminer, Fiano, and Greco.
Yeah.
Like, sorry, but there is no market demand for that product that needs to be fit, you know, that someone, a data nerd, could have told you. It's the same thing with like, our number one selling red wine is a co-ferment of Zabebo and Neradavila called Fresh AF. Like no one's telling you that's someone with a loon shot that is just giving something a crack. And currently we keep doing it. Like right now, the loon shot we've got right now that would blow you away is fucking Tarango.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not just Brown Brothers.
Not just Brown Brothers. No, Brown Brothers collaborated with us to make it happen. You know, so like we have at any point in time, you know, 10, 12 different irons in the fire of just weird shit that we are playing around with. Documentaries. Next month, we're going to Mexico to make wine.
Okay.
Yeah. Mexican wine. Hey, Valley de Guadalupe, amazing Nebbiolo. If you've ever had a chance, Baja, California Nebbiolo, no one knows about it. So we're going to do a whole documentary on it. Fuck it. Why not? What's the worst that could happen?
Cartels.
Well, yeah. I was going to say like kidnapping.
What's the worst could happen? Two tourists in Mexico.
Decapitation, hung from a bridge.
Insurance, actually, we had to check that, and we don't have coverage for ransom. We have coverage for ransom in every other country but
except Mexico.
I'm like, wow, like that was the cause of Laura. I was like, I'm just going to check our insurances before we send staff over to Mexico. Yeah, that's a good fun one.
Okay, that's why we need Laura in the mix.
Very much.
So what's working there with the loon shots where you mentioned a number of successes there where you're just taking a stab in the dark and thinking, oh, this is a cool idea. Let's have a crack at it.
Well, it's interesting. So we think about this a lot because we want to try to minimize the amount of misses that we have, right? And so we try to diagnose hindsight 2020 and then kind of go, well, what's the makeup of this that didn't work and this that did work? Because when we're not just going in entirely blind, we're going in with an idea. You know, currently the Tarango idea, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Tarango. It's an Australian-made grape variety made by a guy called Alan, as well as his collaboration with the CSIRO in the late 70s that were trying to make Beaujolais Nouveau that they could dry farm in the desert at 50 tons per hectare. And it's awesome. It's just the most backwards bonkers thing ever. And it's coming, it kind of was popular for a while and it's really just been back to like, there's only a handful of growers in Australia that still make it, the majority being Brown Brothers. But we look at it this way. We watch, say, Meninga's. It's a great, unfortunately, they're actually shutting down now, but a really great publication, wine-based publication for the industry. We see the continual publication of articles about peewees or peewees, if you talk to a German about it, which are man-made grape varieties that are starting to become gradually a little bit more popular that assist growers with being able to reduce their sprays, environmental impact. And that kind of got us thinking, well, what other man-made, because most of the time man-made grape varieties just bomb. No one's interested in drinking them. But there were a couple that I didn't even realize were man-made because they are so popular. We sort of associate non-popularity with man-made. So therefore, when something is actually popular, you go, it can't possibly be man-made. The most famous one I think most people know about would be Pinotage, which South Africa still hasn't managed to really kind of like spread it globally.
Yeah, I haven't been able to sell that story to the rest of the world.
But Müller-Thurgau is another really important one. So is Weigelt, which in natural winemaker circles is certainly quite popular. And so I thought, screw it, let's see what we can do with Tarango, and check that out. So we're at a sort of, we also know, it's like they're not unknown unknowns. We're kind of constantly testing between known unknowns, unknown knowns, known knowns, and unknown unknowns. You can follow that.
You did well there.
Yeah. So we're constantly, so our known is that young people know so little about wine that you could introduce to them Shiraz or Montepulciano, the amount of familiarity that they have over either of those grape varieties is identical. So you actually have the opportunity to introduce entirely novel concepts to cohorts of people that have large amounts of spending power and actually have it be successful, which is never actually the case. Usually you're fighting a mountain of behavior change. Now you're just trying to like create behavior from nothing. So that enables us to be able to go, well, let's see if we could get Tarango popular. And if we could, the impacts are actually quite
It's an entire generation of people who don't say the dumbest thing that you can say in wine, which is, I am a Shiraz man. Or a,
What does
I
hate Chardonnay.
What does that mean?
So
I think that's a very good insight.
Yeah, so it's like you're selling to a blank slate a lot of the time, and you can kind of
there's pros and cons with this. There's very big pros and cons with this because sometimes they can bring baggage from like sort of other aspects of either like knowledge around alcohol and health, or knowledge around what sustainability is. And quantifying sustainability, like they do have, it's not like they're just complete like beige vanilla blank slates. They still have like a whole bunch of sort of background to them you need to try to understand. We're talking about like young people like they're in a zoo,
Yeah. But it's the jigsaw piece. It's all cut out in a certain way and you've just got to find which way you lock into it.
Yeah. And we're we're exceptionally optimistic for wine, across those cohorts for the next 50 years. Exceptionally bullish even. For wine in particular as well.
And it sounds like your new wine bar, Bottle Shock, is kind of capturing the essence of what you're talking about here with gamifying wine and making it exciting and fun. And we're just going to try stuff and see if you can work it out and think about it in a different way to perhaps the way young people have thought about wine before. Can you talk about Bottle Shock, how that came about?
Bottle Shock's a fun way. Bottle Shock is probably like the easiest way that I could sort of describe it would be like the ultimate bait and switch on a customer, but puts a customer exactly where they want to be and where the industry should have probably put them in quite a while ago. And so it was a natural result of us looking at cellar door culture. You rock up to a cellar door, you're given at worst one glass, and then they take the glass and give you another one glass and take that away. And then they pour it and then they dictate to you and then you get to taste it. It's really dumb. It's really silly because and then we go, oh, wow, young people aren't really interested in this sort of stuff. It's like, yeah, but young people haven't had that ever happen to them. Like they have Wikipedia if they have questions. They are self-learners. We have taught a whole cohort of people to go out and find their answers. That's what we wanted from them, to go out and find their answers. And then they went and did it and we didn't change correspondingly. And so I would say take the cellar door, no offense to cellar door people, but like take them out of it. Present to them 5 wines, let them just taste it. Now, to be able to give them incentive to actually taste it seriously, turn it into a game where they could win, where they could actually beat their fellow person. Then give them a sense of the rules and maybe a couple of little hot tips to be able to actually beat it, and then put actual stakes behind it. Have a winery dumb enough to produce a ton of wine that it can give away a bottle for everyone that wins. And then it's like, okay, well, we've actually got real stakes here. And you watch, like the effect of it when you go into the bar is fascinating. And especially when we have trade, we're a different beast, category of human. But even the trade really gets into it because they're like, oh, I'm pretty good at this. Well, okay, cool. Like, let's see how good you are. And then we go sort of on the other end where you have just complete, new people to the industry or just people there for a good time. And they're going, well, firstly, I'm having a great time. But secondly, when they've got sort of 5 wines, And we get pretty funky with them. So things like currently we have, because it was Bastille Day just recently. And so we did always guess the imposter. So we got 5 wines, 4 of them are French, 1 of them is German. Someone's crossed the Maginot line. You need to try to figure out who, right? And the wine, in our instance, was actually a Spätburgunder. So everyone's like, German Riesling. Cool. Well, we got you.
Yeah.
You're right. So we had an Alsatian Riesling and we had, Spätburgunder masquerading. And so straight away, even the industry is completely stuffed. They won't be able to pick up this. But we actually found more success happening with the people that are just there for a good time. And we kind of give them the hints. We kind of go, look, you're going to experience something like higher acidity is probably what you're going to note from a German wine against a French wine to give it to them in reference. Don't be fooled by color as well. So just taste these and feel them. You watch them. They start having this amazing conversation across a table where they're going, I think this one's got higher acidity. I think this one's a little bit more aromatic. I think this is exactly how we want people to taste wine. You're tasting wine now. You're not being told what to taste. Or we do like 5 different price points. You need to organize them from the cheapest to most expensive. That is a win-win-win-win because they will inevitably get it wrong because that's very hard to do, if not impossible. They will choose the one that they actually like the most, that is immediately appealing, which often isn't the most expensive one, but they'll say it's the most expensive one because they like it the most. And so inevitably at the end, we go, actually, it's not as expensive as you think it is. It's like $25 a bottle. It's available right over there.
Yeah. And out comes the card.
Yeah. And they go, well, that's cool. That's amazing. And you know what? You're not wrong. It is delicious. And all of your mates that you just said, yeah, this is totally, we're going to go with this one because this is the most delicious. You are absolutely correct. It's amazing. Yeah, you don't need to spend that much on it. It's all good. And it gives them confidence. They come out of this whole process, firstly having fun, but it's sort of like the education's been masquerading as entertainment and they feel a more confident taster and more confident around wine.
It makes you feel a part of it rather than just you sat down, you knew nothing, someone came over and did a spiel about what that is and then you kind of can't remember.
100%. And it's so backwards that we continue to operate this way. But I do understand, like, we had the option to open up a cellar door. We don't have a cellar door for Unico Zelo. We don't own one yet. We're trying to build one. We had the option to just put one there. We actually still thought that the best use of that space and the best use of our money was creating this crazy sort of concept that, I don't know, puts it even the conversation about like blind tasting puts wine back into context. So why does the French wine taste different to the German wine? Isn't it all just wine? Suddenly they're going, so because Germany's colder, it makes, so they're going to naturally probably produce more, obviously, Riesling, so then we actually have a flight, 5 different Rieslings from 5 different countries, so, and none of them are Australia. So, they can go in and actually look at acidities and sweetness and the impact on this and how to pick up acidity with sweetness. Obviously, this was a bit more of like a veteran's tasting flight, but it brings the conversation towards where I think we've all been trying to put wine for everyone all the time. We kind of go wine and food and wine and all these other events. But I think the only thing that's going to grow the wine industry is for young people to understand that wine has a very particularly distinct difference to every other alcohol ever. And you can bring it back to narrative and story and place and time, even. And that's what I think young people look for, a compelling and meaningful reason to consume anything, and you're giving them the best one in wine of all things. So you're going to put alcohol in their body, which admittedly is a poison in many respects, but we can talk about health stuff if you want to as well. But like they need a compelling reason. They're not against putting poison in their bodies. The highest amount of recreational drug users in history, probably because it's cheap, readily accessible and fun. Like it's not like young people are any different than other young generations before. It's just wine hasn't been presented.
And it's the one thing where, those strict thoughts on provenance seem to fall away somehow too.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Is my wine organic, but is my Coke?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah, 100%.
You might find one of
Chances
those
are
bars.
it's not.
Might find one of those bars in Mexico.
Maybe. Watch the YouTube channel. You'll find out.
How often are you mixing it up with your flights? Like you mentioned, Bastille Day is
every month.
Yeah.
Every month. We have 150 wines on by the glass because everything's Coravand. So I think that would actually, we've not checked, but I would say we've probably got the biggest by the glass selection in rural Australia for sure.
Have to be close.
It'll be, I don't know any other place that 150 wines by the glass. But we have the benefit of, again, different margins. We own the building. It's in a rural setting, so we don't, and we also have our own winery that's attached there. So it enables the visitor to be able to have very high quality wines at a really reasonable price point, and you can break it down by glass. as well as imports. There's not many places in the hills or wine regions that do this.
And this is a physical manifestation of your YouTube channel, which has been running for 6 years and got quite a following, and you've done a shit ton of videos, and it carries through that same sort of vibe of fast and fun and making it approachable, and now it's materialized into a place that people can actually go and visit.
Yep.
You talk about the YouTube channel element of things and where that started and what you guys have done with that.
Yeah, so we had been planning to do something more digitally focused around about 2018, 2019. And that's when I started to nerd out about like an aspect of wine that I think is vastly underestimated and underexplored, which is just storytelling. Just be a better storyteller. Like, how could I be a better storyteller? And it was like trying to direct someone to do a bit like we were employing a photographer to come along and do some photography. And I was finding it very frustrating because I don't think I'm the best communicator. I've had to work really hard on it. I over-communicate to compensate, as you're very well aware of. I was finding it really hard to say, this is the look that I'm after. So that night I went home and just blitzed YouTube videos and photography. And so the next day when the photographers came back in, I was like, do you mind? And I grabbed their camera and I did the setting, took the photo. I was like, can you just do that? And they're like, why didn't you just tell me? Right. And it's at that moment when it was like, you know, the whole like picture's worth 1,000 words. I realized I just saved myself 1,000 words from speaking. I could just take the photo myself. And so then we started to invest in sort of all this equipment, and I was like, look, I think we need to move to like, this is the point where we should be able to move wine into a digital sphere, because that's where young people get their information from. It's where I got my information about how to do photography in 24 hours, at least the basics. So we started doing some digital stuff. We started amassing the gear for it. I started sort of upskilling my own knowledge of it. And then COVID happened. And then it was like, well, now,
what other choice have we got?
Now we go. And so we did admittedly probably the wrong thing. We should have just gone straight to YouTube. Instead we did streaming. So it was YouTube live because we were like, well, if we're going to do anything, we've got to offer value to people. Okay, there's no just point just kind of reiterating the stuff that's already on the platform. So we want to, we realize now people are locked up at home. They're working from home. And I think having a knockoff, finishing your day, it's very obvious when you're working in an office because you leave the office, you go through the daily ritual of trying to get home. But now you don't have that. And I was like, well, what if we could be that like at 5 p.m. every day, we will be here live streaming now. And you can have a drink with us, and we do a daily happy hour. And we did that every day for 200 days in a row, weekends inclusive, everything. And then we were like, oh, this is kind of cool, because like all of my friends who work in hospitality, who like work in restaurants, they're not open. So we're like at 5 p.m., you could never get a chef. 5 p.m., you could never get wait staff, like, because they're all going to be working. So we got them in as interview guests to be able to talk through what they're going through, to be able to share, because there are people, believe it or not, that really love to work in hospitality. They love hospitality. They love giving of themselves to others. And they found it really hard to get off their chests how they can't do that right now. And they didn't know how else to live being locked up. And so we got some, like Nikki Friedley is probably of note, one of the greatest interviews, I think, and just floored us, like tingling when she's talking about the stuff that she's going through during COVID. And everyone else who's watching, and we amassed this sort of crowd of, 100,000 people all watching, going, I had no idea that that's what was going through that person's head. That's like, I'm not alone. And that's the key thing. It's like, we just wanted people to not feel isolated and alone. And we use wine as a storytelling piece for this in various ways. Got burnt out at the end of that.
Funnily.
And you can actually go and watch the first episode, the last episode, you watch me put on 15 kilos. And it's quite amazing. Like, and it was only after that I discovered trail running to keep me along. But we had a hiatus, and then just the sheer quantity of people getting in touch with us saying, you should do that again. Like, now we're all out and about. We really wanted to encourage people to get out and about. But then they were like, actually, we really enjoyed the connection. So back into 2021, we started it up again. And it was like, well, we just took the best bits of that and then turned it into what eventually became the sort of blind tasting thing. And then there's blind tasting, there's people can follow along with the farm side of things. We sort of see wine as the central part of like an operating system, where it's like wine's the topic, but we talk about travel, we talk about war, we talk about labor, politics, sustainability, we talk about young people in farming, we talk about all these sort of really quite interesting topics, but it all comes back to wine, which is, again, in a meta way, showcasing how pervasive wine can be as a topic and how specialist it is in doing all of these things.
Yeah, community is the buzzword around all of this, but, is community something you can sketch out on paper and then go and build, or does it actually have to happen in a more organic way?
It has to happen in an organic way. I don't think we have the capacity to be able to understand how that actually works. And I think our brains are that developed. Like, we launched a Discord channel. We just thought this was going to be like a handful of nerds that even have or even know about Discord. But now we have like it's like a self-fulfilling thing now. Like, it's sort of like I'm sure people who launch Reddit groups that kind of blow up kind of know this sense where it's like, we just started a thing. We didn't put a lot of effort into it. It was actually all the users put all the effort into it. Now we have like channels on the Discord where people just take photos and post what they're drinking, and then other people just comment on it. And so everyone then gets incentivized to post more of what they're drinking, and people just have a conversation. Now there's just shitloads of conversation all happening amongst this really core audience and group of people that just want to feel connected. And we even discovered things like this does exist, and it's quite an issue. One, the wine industry is perfectly developed to attack, and so is digital media. That in cohorts of people, often there is one or two people that love wine way more than the rest, and they don't know how to share that with anyone. And this gives them the opportunity to share that with people that are equally as nerdy and interested as them. Like, it's this sort of realm of Redditors, as well. And we didn't realize it at the start, but we started and then just went boom, now we just police it. We just kind of manage it and make sure that there's no far right, stuff that gets posted.
Someone sort of comes and takes it.
It has happened before. And we have like community admins and moderators that assist that, who are more than happy and willing to assist for no payment as well, mind you. They just, for the love of the community, to keep it going.
So I know that it takes a whole lot of time and effort to make video content like you guys make. And think about the next video and do the filming and then do the editing, and it's a lot of energy and a lot of effort goes into that. Why is that worth it to you guys?
Well, if you ask Laura, it's not worth it at all, because it costs about $150,000 a year to do. Yeah. But it is largely the only bit of marketing that we do. We don't do, in terms of like marketing versus say advertising and sales. We sort of separate these things up. And as I, go in to fight the good fight for marketing can't really be measured. As they often say, as soon as a measure becomes a metric, it ceases to be a good measure. Measuring marketing is a little bit like measuring how good a parent you are. Like, no one can actually measure how good of a parent you are, but if you send your kid to school and the first day they clock someone in the face, someone's going to have a fucking signal, right? And so this is the same sort of thing, is like we do this channel, it's really good marketing, and the signal is Unico Zelo is growing at 16 to 20% per annum still, even though the world is the wine world's in turmoil and young people don't want to drink anymore, and like we have a glut of red wine, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't share the same problems that other wine companies do, and that's politically, like, we're not allowed to admit that in many respects, but maybe there's something to learn here. When we're growing, we don't have an issue with that, and I think largely it's probably to do with the outside service what we might offer. Wine curious people. Most of our audience, it's about 250,000 people, are in numerous countries. Only 30% are from Australia. All under the age of 40. So it's a large cohort of wine-interested people under the age of 40. So when people say like young people don't want to drink, I disagree.
Does distilling mesh seamlessly with this as well, or is it wine? Does the bridge break somewhere between wine and distilling?
Getting myself in a hot water here. Like I do struggle with the spirits industry personally. We don't get very involved. I'm very supportive of the spirits industry because I think it brings great value to rural land and rural jobs and rural people, and I think it can be supportive of the wine industry. I'm not so sure, and I'm willing to be convinced of the sort of longevity of just like alcohol in that packaging. High strength alcohol. From what I'm seeing,
there's a lot of unnecessary ethanol. Although there are notable examples of things that I think fit within the spectrum of being able to showcase terroir, site, time, place. That is very relevant.
brandy in particular is something we're investing quite heavily in. We've barreled down last year 35,000 litres of brandy, and we're kind of continuing that on for the next 4 years. Distilling for us came about as a way to turn what we were doing with Unico Zelo up to 11. So with Unico Zelo, we're bound by the genus and species of Vitis vinifera. Tarango sits over here. That's another whole story. And Vitis vinifera is not native to Australia. And one of the best ways to be able to find what is most appropriate to grow in any particular place is to just grow what's native there. Happens to be resistant to every single, fungicide or fungus, rot, pest, weed. In many instances, they are the weeds. And so Applewood, the distillery, came about as a way for us to monetize native Australian ingredients to be able to get people to displace non-native crops in the ground, as well as became an avenue for us to be explore Indigenous culture, of which we have a whole sort of non-profit arm where we work with particularly the Gugger mob to go and maintain a lot of their sacred sites and develop those relationships. And I think it's a really important part if you're going to say you're Australian, contribute to Aussie culture. And that was a great vehicle, ironically, because it's alcohol, but it was a great vehicle for us to not talk about alcohol, but to talk about flavour. And how we can use those flavours to be a stronger Australia in a global sense. Especially when you've got a lot of growers that plant what they plant because they can sell what they plant. Not they plant what they can grow to the best of their ability and then find markets for it. We're very much, Australia's always kind of been this way. They're very much market takers and a lot of market makers in agriculture in Australia. And so Applewood and distilling sort of meshed into that side of things. But I've definitely had, especially recently, like significant doubts about the sustainability of the spirits industry. And personally, I think it's going to be, unless there's some radical reforms inside Australia, like domestically, the future for Australian distilling is sending stuff out offshore. But then it's another whole quagmire because then it's like shipping, labour cost. And I don't think any political party is going to touch the excise tax with a barge pole right now. There's not a lot of incentive to do so.
There's very little incentive.
And so the spirits is going to be priced out of the realm of young people being able to afford it. It's on its last legs at the moment. Scary.
How do you split up your focus between distilling and wine? Like how much does
it's all rolled into one. Like the spirit side of things, especially some of like the spirits base. Like because there's spirits that people talk about like gin, whiskey, brandy, rum. They're spirits, but then there's like spirit-based things, and then there's wine-based things with spirit in them. And so we've actually started to move gradually more towards the wine-based stuff, accepting that that's actually probably where our forte is. Like we admire companies like Never Never because they came out with like a clear mission, and they made great quality product, great quality branding, and they were bartenders. They're spirits people. You try to get those guys making wine, and they are so out of their depth, it's not funny. And this is kind of what's happened. Like we approach spirits like a winemaker would. And so like our number one clients are actually restaurants, not bars, which is, we love that, but it's not exactly the highest turnover avenue for a spirit company. So we've had to adjust pricing and offering accordingly. And so we've been sort of gradually moving towards our speciality and refocusing, especially because, money is not as prolific as it was, pre-COVID. Or maybe including the first 2 years of COVID, courtesy of the government printing a shitload. So it means that you have to sort of like, again, it's that sort of like we're bulking and now we're cutting. The business grows in many different, directions. We see what works and what doesn't work. And then sort of we cut that down. And this meshes pretty well with, say, the Applewood cellar door, closing and bottle shock reopening around it, because we noticed that the YouTube channel, as much as it's not monetary growth, it is growing at about 100% to 200% per annum. Growth is growth. And I think we have two sort of North Stars for our growth that we sort of pay attention to. One of them's basic, one of them's like revenue and profit. And the other one is followers, audience, and customers.
How many of the people coming to Bottle Shock are subscribers?
I'll put it this way, probably around about 20%, then everyone leaves as a subscriber, so 100% leave, if that makes any sense. So it's just part of a bigger ecosystem. Keep in mind, Bottle Shock's been open like 2 months. And during winter.
It's a great way to retain customers though and retain a relationship. So anyone, like you said, they don't know about the YouTube channel necessarily. They're just trying something different and then they have a cool experience and then they can easily subscribe and stay in touch. And
correct. And then they get like another level of sense of community and a sense of back and forth.
They take a little ownership. in a way.
Absolutely. They become a part of the cohort.
Yeah, they're advocates bringing other people in.
And then it's on us not to disrespect that. So like a big part of when we were opening up was like, well, we need to have the products from producers around us that don't have cellar doors. We should, if you have another cellar door, we should kind of just kindly, unless there's a really specific reason to have them on a flight, we should kindly direct customers to those cellar doors to increase tourism. We don't want to take away. So guys like Ada Wine Co., Gareth Belton, Tarasakota, have a place that if I'm sorry, but like no one's at work on a Saturday to show you around the winery, you should go to Bottle Shock. They can give you a tasting of the products. They can send, like, a lot of these people are close personal friends, so they can send us a text message to say, hey, this person's traveling through the hills. Can you just crack them the bottles that you have and we'll replace them or whatever? Yep. And we know their backstories and we can represent them in as impartial way as possible. And so we don't really have anyone that sort of does this.
How's that working? Because that's pretty unique and cool.
Great, like in a word, so plenty of people are coming through because of the channel, but also because, they're looking to have this unique, at least Adelaide Hills experience, and it's like Southern Barossa, Northern Hills experience, where they can't find a lot of these producers, or those producers just don't have open doors. Vignavea, we will always have Dylan's stuff. They're amazing Grenache. For people to be able to try when Dylan isn't, the expectations on small business as well as winemakers are that they are available for the public, like rock stars all the time. Like, you can't do that. You can't have it always. So we sort of exist as this really sort of healthy interim where they can actually do that.
And you can head overseas when you want to, or you have to do a bit of planning first and run it past Laura, but you've got that freedom to be able to go and do stuff like that and keep everything running?
No, we don't have freedom to do that. Of course not. No, money doesn't grow on trees. No, to give you like a really specific one. So this latest sort of idea about making wine in Mexico came about because a guy that I studied with, Maurizio, he has a winery in McLaren Vale called Somos, and he's Mexican. We studied together in Adelaide, and he's got a winery also in Mexico. And I was like, mate, like, why don't we collaborate? He's like, oh yeah, we can make some in the Vale. I was like, no. Mexico, buddy. Let's go to Mexico. And so the more that we discovered and talked about Mexico, and usually 3 times a year we have Noah, who really heads up most of our global sales. He's in America 3 times a year, September, October, which is harvest time over there. So he was going to be there anyway. And so I was like, well, do you want to just meet me down in Mexico? And he was like, yeah, sure, we could easily do that. And then Henry, the other host of the show, is like, oh, can I come? I'm like, well, you don't really have a reason to be there apart from holding the camera and like, but he's also, in terms of the channel, he's the everyman. He's the one that drags the biggest audience. Yeah. I'm the smallest. I'm the most technical because I'm a technical winemaker, and then Noah's the passionate. So he talks in more like, this is the story of wine. And then Henry is like, I fucking love wine.
He's the front man. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I go to Laura and say, hey, boys trip to Mexico. What do you reckon?
What could go wrong?
And so she's like, absolutely not a chance in hell. And I was like, explain my reason. I was like, this is why I think we should do it. I know it sounds really crazy.
You had the PowerPoint out and you're trying to pitch.
Yeah, a little bit like that. And so she makes one folly, which is, look, we're paying, every time a staff member goes and does one of these trade runs through the States, it's about 10,000 Australian once flights, accommodation, everything, is tallied up. It's like, if Noah's not doing that anymore, there's the budget. And so seriously, I'm not even remotely kidding about what we're doing. I got personal frequent flyer points to get all 3 of us there and back. So flights were like $300 in booking fees. And then we're traveling with a roller bag of ultralight tents and like all the camping gear, because for the first half week, we can't afford accommodation in California because we're going to do a whole like Napa Valley thing. We're going to do like Bottle Shock does Bottle Shock. So cool. We'll be at like Susie's in Calistoga. Yeah. We're going to go and meet up with Bo Barrett and going to do a whole bunch of stuff there. And then we're going to, head on down and do a couple of events through LA and San Diego before yeeting out to Ensenada. And so we're camping for the first sort of whole part of it. It's like doing Napa on a backpacker's budget sort of vibe of a video.
Yeah, Napa and backpacking don't necessarily go together all that well.
No, definitely not. So, I presented it back to Laura. It's like, see, I got it done for 8.5. What do you reckon?
Does the insurance cover that?
No, the insurance is covered. So we're all pretty good with that. But yeah, like
you're all fine until you get swept up in an ice raid.
Yeah.
And then
yeah. Well, I mean,
and
you speak about it
deported.
now, like literally right now, like talking right now at this very moment, Noah is stuck in Montreal because Air Canada's got a strike going on. So we have had to enact the whole insurance sort of side of things because we can't get Noah out of Canada.
Good rehearsal then.
Yeah. So it all comes out in the wash. But no, we're not free to be able to go around the world whenever we want. We have a 4-year-old as well. So parents being parents.
Where does family fit into all of this? I mean,
yeah.
You've got to find time for that too.
Yeah, you got to find time for that. You got to plan for that. We give as much time as we can possibly give to Shelby. We have really great in-laws and sort of grandparents that come in. So we have like typically one trip a year during the middle of the year where Laura and I will head overseas, either to the States or to Europe, where it's either we're selling wine or buying wine. Depends on what side of the world we're on. But no, unfortunately we're not free, but it kind of like fortunately as well. We also have the vineyard to look after, which definitely you can't look after a vineyard from afar. Not well.
Has its own rhythms.
Mm-hmm.
How do you manage to do all this? You got a whole lot of hats that you're wearing, and a man who seems to me would probably wake up early and go to bed reasonably late and fit as much as you can into it each day.
Well, I don't go to bed late. I go to bed early and I wake up early, for sure. Enough caffeine to kill sizable livestock. Absolutely. Again, I think about this like one of my own staff members, listening to this, but they'll also be able to attest to this. So about half the year I wake up at 4. And I think you've had a couple of early morning sort of 3:30 messages from me as well. So I wake up really early. That's not sustainable. So like now I go on, a bit of a later schedule of 5. But getting up early is probably the only sort of time between, a child waking up and needing all of your attention, or most of your attention anyway. The level of sort of deep work you kind of need to get into and understanding of all of it to be able to be effective. A bunch of people that, and quite a lean team, we did get during COVID up to about 30 full-time equivalent staff. We're down near about 12 or 13 at the moment. So we have like teams of really highly effective people that like to be good at their jobs and like to do sort of crazy stuff like this.
Can you recognize when you're not being effective and how you change that?
Good question, Nick. I think Laura probably recognizes it. I'm getting better as I get older. I think Laura recognizes it. It's sort of like, have you seen the the ad for like quitting smoking, and where like the guy's just going off his nut and his wife just shoves a cigarette in his mouth? Yep. It's a little bit like that, where I was like, hey, like you need to, often she'll be like, you need to like go for a run. We both do like long distance trail running. Laura a lot longer than me. And that's a huge impact. It's like the ultimate nootropic ever, right? It's the physical activity.
So that's the reset button.
And that's hard. That's hard one to do, dragging yourself out for a run, especially when you're just so obsessive, like, oh, but if just that next email, I could just get that work done, I'll feel better. It never is. Like you go, yeah. So we train hard. I won't say we party hard because we don't, but we take work really seriously, more than most people would probably be comfortable with, I think, sometimes.
What do you do with that obsessiveness in managing that better over the years? Like, do you catch yourself obsessing about something small that really you're not getting anything out of obsessing about it and you need to just put it away? Is that something that you actively work on getting better at?
Yeah, I definitely actively work on getting better at it. And I've only managed to be able to get it under control probably in the last 2 years, I think.
What do you do now when that happens?
I rely a lot on Laura, to be honest. Having actually, this is like great argument for having children. Having a child kind of almost forces you to not be obsessive over things. You have to give stuff up. And that's like an interesting muscle that I never had to stress as a young person. Because as a young person, if you're obsessive, you get good grades. You get that little gold sticker, you get the little gold medal, you get your parents going, well done. And then suddenly this is why OCPD is really hard to treat. Obsessive compulsive personality disorder. And that's what breeds it, is this like, congrats, you had really high performance as per the criteria that you get measured in because you are obsessive, and it becomes.
And continues into adulthood with hustle culture and people being patted on the back the longer you work, and it being a flex to talk about how little sleep you get because you're constantly working, and our society by and large saying, oh, that's great. Like, and trying to outdo each other with how much we're working.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think like, if I could figure out how to be more effective in 8 hours than I am trying to be, on 12 or 14 or 15 hours, then that would be ideal. But I'll be honest, if I found that out, I'd probably just be more effective in 15 hours, because you can get it all done. So only now am I getting it's like the blessing and the curse of starting when we were 20. Now I'm 35. That's just the behavior of a 20-year-old, Now I'm finally starting to get to a point where things are a little bit more calmer. We're doing a lot in reference to maybe what other people do or other people see from outside looking in. But from my perspective, we are actually finding some semblance of balance. And a lot of the decision-making that we're making at the moment, for example, when we purchased the property up in Forest Range, it's 25 hectares. It's 50 acres. It's just a lot to manage. But it's actually a lot to manage because if we had made a decision to buy something anything less, then I'm personally managing it forever. But at 25 hectares, the numbers actually kind of work out that you can employ management. So there is a point of sort of exit of the labor.
I can imagine that, what exists now that you're 35 is very different to what you imagined when you're 20. And there's been a lot of change in where you've been going in that sort of 15 years. So when you're focused so much on what's happening today or next week or next month, where's the long-term thinking?
50 years plus, which is actually why I'm so optimistic for the wine in the industry. And it kind of pains me, it infuriates me, it kind of pisses me off actually when you sit in a room full of, Nick, the average age of most people in our wine industry, you're like, yeah, okay. So there is an innate inherent bias for people to only really value, the time that they have left that's within their control. And, we've had people approach us, say, for example, to purchase the business, before. And we don't know what we'll do with our time. Our actual biggest concern wasn't actually realizing X amount of value for the company or an exit or the employees or staff. It was just never a question.
What do we do without it?
Are you going to give me a job? And you're going to give me a job for 50 years? And is the job going to be an effective job? And am I going to be able to use my skill set? That was actually much more of a concern. And it will be less of a concern as time moves on, for sure. I understand that. But at 35, I'm going to be here until 65, 70. Yeah. And so a lot of the decisions, we're doing close planted single pole 1 by 1 meter Fiano in the hills. No one's asking for that. Yeah. That's a dumb idea. But if you've got 30 years to make it right, that's the timeline. And we've got the capitalization. We've been very responsible, cash managers. So the business can withstand and weather, many of these things. So we know that we will be here at 30 years to be able to do that. Pray we don't go to war with anyone.
Yeah. Not many people have the success of turning dumb ideas into smart realities, Brendan, that you've been able to manage.
Thank you. The fact you're saying that definitely means something.
No, it's absolutely. The runs are on the board, mate. The runs are on the board.
And it's powerful to still have so much time to invest in front of you.
Yeah. And it's
touch something wooden.
It is interesting, mentioned earlier about the sort of what circumstances do we arrive in to be able to achieve a lot of this stuff, and a lot of it is coming from a point of comfortability, and I think that's that tipping point where Laura becomes a better leader, and there is this tipping point startup culture where you're just you have time and you have effort but you don't have money, all right, and so you have to burn all of that until such time as you have a bit of money, and then it's whoa, we need to manage this. You become either slightly conservative or slightly more planned. And that's the same sort of thing. And it's this sort of, it even changes our approach to staff. We do find that staff are actually more effective when you just, I know you say pay them more. There is a point where you can just simply pay them too much, but there is this sort of really amazing sort of narrow band where basically a lot of their sort of day-to-day living isn't so much of a concern anymore, and they can just dedicate themselves. And it's not out of adoration that you pay them. It's out of comfortability that they don't need to worry. And that's what I think, is
and they're better value to the business.
Yeah.
100%. And the numbers actually make sense on that. Paying a bit more because you get more out of the staff and the culture's better.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. As long as yes. 100%.
In conclusion, what is it that really makes you optimistic?
I think, and this is a hot take, I
like a good hot take.
I think we've been anchored and framed to Australia's heyday of wine, having been in the past, and not really giving enough scope for Australia's heyday of winemaking being in the future.
Yeah.
And I look for indicators rather than looking at data points, because data points requires us to commoditize wine, which is what got us into a lot of these problems that we have. But the indicators are really interesting to me. You know, the young people and the people we service, they care about things like appropriateness. You know, Nick, you're a wine guy. I'm having Thai food. What wine's on the table?
Beer.
What wine's on the table?
Yeah, Bissay, Riesling and Gewürz.
Yeah, where's that Riesling coming from?
Somewhere that produces, off-dry style Riesling.
It's Germany. It's that part of the world, which is really interesting. And this is actually it was a Gen Z that pointed this out, how weird it was that we were pairing German wine with Thai food, knowing full well that the Germans don't really eat a lot of Thai food.
No.
They go, well, do Thai people make, well, it's a legitimate question if you don't know what you're talking about. It's like, well, they do, but not for the most part. But there is a well-developed economy and a well-developed supply chain and wine industry that exists in a well-developed, winemaking country that does eat Thai food. And in fact, if you looked at our last census, 30% of our entire populace of Australian citizens weren't born in Australia. Yeah. And if you include firstborns, it's 55%. We're one of the highest immigration rate change countries in the world at 3% per annum. That's a doubling every 30 years. This is the reason why actually big, rich, heavy Shiraz is increasingly irrelevant, because we stopped eating beef and lamb and pasta and potatoes and meat pies for lunch even. Now we eat poultry and seafood and vegetables and rice and banh mi for lunches.
Fish sauce and...
Yeah. So the wine styles have to shift and change and become more Asiatic. And we have a well-developed industry that can actually service that cuisine actually is a part. It's like we have agency over that. I don't think the Germans should have agency over that. I think it's a good pairing, don't get me wrong, but I don't think that when we talk about the special shit about wine, the cultural shit, then that's a hard barrier to jump. And so if you look at Asiatic cuisines, particularly Southeast Asian cuisines, firstly, they're the cuisines that get consumed like large quantities, and one of the largest consumed cuisines, if not the largest consumed cuisines in the world. And no one else has agency, over producing that sort of stuff. So we look at things like orange wine, we look at off-dry examples. We look at aromatics, the re-rise of Gewürztraminer, which sounds like it's absolutely bonkers. But I don't know, in 50 years, maybe we've seen more bonkers stuff happen in the industry before. We look at red wines with no tannin. Oh my God, well, we get so much tannin from our food here, from the amount of vegetables that we have, soy, fish sauce. A lot of those condiments already have a lot of structure in them. So we look at structureless reds. That are easier to pair with those kind of foods. And that's actually really hard to find. It's hard to find, say, primary fruited Grenache with little structure. But Australia does it.
Yeah.
Australia does it. Now, the French don't do that. The Spanish don't do that. You can't find that in America. And look at it out of Swartland and broader South Africa and the Western Cape. Like they do big structural, examples of Grenache. So those won't pair with the cuisine that is so common to us. And so I think if we had different or better or adjusted leadership within Wine Australia that would be able to recognise this, go for the short-term pain for an exceptional long-term gain, that Australia would be the powerhouse, or at least one of the powerhouses of winemaking globally, easily.
That is genuinely a hot take, and I kind of love it. The Tarango and Gewürz-led future, as seen by Brendan Carter. That's one crowded hour that wish we had more, but thanks, Brendan. It's always a pleasure to tap into that brain. Thanks, mate.
Absolute pleasure.
Thanks for listening. Head to the Wine Grape Council of South Australia website for links and further resources. This is part of a bigger conversation, so feel free to share this podcast with your mates and look after yourselves. Cheers.